You know, when it comes to China, especially in international politics, even words cannot be taken lightly. Every word there is a signal, every term a political marker. It's not just diplomacy, it's an entire multi-layered system in which even the tone of an official statement can amount to a diplomatic strike. And today, we are witnessing China step out of the shadows, rise from the seat of an observer, and take a step toward a conflict that could reshape the global architecture of power. Yes, we're talking about the trade war between the United States and China. But it's much more than just tariffs. This is a battle for the world order. And believe me, the stakes in this game are far higher than they may appear at first glance. It all began when the United States, under Trump's leadership, started applying aggressive tariff measures under the slogan, America First. And China, at first, responded with restraint. In March, when the United States imposed 10% tariffs on Chinese goods, Beijing's reaction was fairly predictable. We expressed strong dissatisfaction. But when the tariffs increased to 34%, the tone changed. Now Beijing is firmly opposed and considers the actions of the United States unacceptable. This is where things get interesting. A change in rhetoric is not just a formality, it's a signal. China is making it clear. You've crossed the line, and from now on, there will be not a diplomatic dialogue, but systemic resistance. At the next stage, the United States applied more pressure. Trump threatened to impose an additional 50% in tariffs in response to China's reaction. And China didn't just respond. It called it a mistake upon a mistake, and, for the first time, used a term that is nearly taboo in Chinese diplomacy, blackmail. And that is a direct expression of political irritation, a shift from passive defense to active offense. How is Beijing responding? Very harshly. Tariffs have been imposed on American agricultural products and energy resources. Exports of strategic materials have been restricted, and inspections have been initiated on American companies operating in China. This is no longer a diplomatic game. This is economic warfare, or warfare, in its purest form. But China is going further. It knows where to strike. You think TikTok is just an app? You're mistaken. It is both an economic and political asset. And when the Trump administration decided that TikTok should fall under American jurisdiction, China was initially ready to make concessions. But as soon as talks of new tariffs emerged, Beijing suddenly withdrew from the deal. That was no coincidence. It was a calculated political move. China made it clear, you want to control our assets? Then prepare for a symmetrical response. In addition, China is actively using its sovereign wealth fund, one of the largest in the world. These are trillions of dollars that can be directed towards supporting Chinese companies, purchasing shares, and creating artificial demand to stabilize the market. This is a survival strategy under sanction pressure. The United States simply does not have such a resource. Its budget deficit and massive external debt prevent it from playing by those rules. To give you a sense of the scale, in just the first 2 months of 2025, China injected more than 900 billion yuan, approximately $125 billion, into the market in the form of subsidies and preferential loans for enterprises affected by American sanctions. The People's Bank of China lowered key interest rates and introduced new measures to stimulate domestic demand. Unlike the United States, which depends on global imports, China can offset a drop in exports with a rise in internal consumption. And here's the key point. China does not act emotionally. This is cold calculation. While Washington tries to rally allies by raising tariffs and imposing restrictions, Beijing is building a parallel economic architecture. More than 120 countries around the world already named China as their largest trading partner. And that's not even counting the Belt and Road Initiative, through which China has invested more than $1 trillion in infrastructure projects from Africa to Eastern Europe. While Trump pursues a policy of isolationism, China is expanding its spheres of influence. It offers an alternative to the Western model. No lectures on human rights, no interference in domestic affairs. Just investments, roads, power plants, and all of it in exchange for loyalty. Yes, it is pragmatism, but it is precisely this pragmatism that is shaping the New World Order today. And here, it's important to note how China uses the crisis to strengthen its image on the international stage. It demonstrates, we are not a source of instability. We are an anchor of stability. While American representatives in Munich accuse Europe of cowardice and disunity, China declares, the world must be multipolar, just, and based on equality. These statements sound not merely like declarations. They are geopolitical messages. But not everything is so clear-cut. China is not flawless. It continues a policy of suppressing opposition, threatens Taiwan, and militarizes the South China Sea. It stands accused of cyber espionage and violations of intellectual property rights. And yet, in a world weary of the West's unpredictability, China appears as the more stable and rational partner. The United States, on the other hand, is showing signs of weakness. Its dependence on Chinese goods is colossal. For example, in 2024, more than 35% of all semiconductors and 70% of the rare earth metals used in American industry came from China. If Beijing cuts off these supplies, the American economy could be brought to its knees within just a few months. And here is the central question: is the West prepared for such a scenario? Can Europe, the United States, and their allies build an alternative to Chinese influence? Or will they continue the policy of sanctions-based coercion, which, as practice shows, only pushes China closer to Russia, Iran, and the countries of Southeast Asia? There will be no winners in this game. If the trade war continues, everyone loses. Inflation in the United States has already risen to 6.4% at the beginning of 2025, largely due to the rising cost of imported goods from China. American farmers are losing access to the Chinese market, while tech giants like Apple, Tesla, and Nvidia are suffering multi-billion-dollar losses due to the shrinking of their consumer base. And yet, China is prepared to endure. Its government is not dependent on elections. There are no protests that could topple the elite. It has a strategic vision and the resources to support it. China is ready for a prolonged struggle, and perhaps this is what makes it a more dangerous adversary. And here lies the paradox. In trying to weaken China, the United States is undermining its own authority and losing allies. Meanwhile, China, silently, methodically, step by step, is building an alternative world where the West will no longer be the hegemon. And that world is already arriving. What do you think? Is this the end of the American era? Or is there still time to change course? Share your opinion in the comments. Your voice matters.